peace and blessings to you. My name is Jere B. I am the EntreMusician, and so are you. But you know what? So is this young brother sitting to the left of your screen. We've said on this program that we've had some EntreMusicians, but now we have a doctor. Okay, we have Dr. Alton Merrell. Dr. Alton Merrell received his PhD in music from the University of Pittsburgh, jazz studies, received his master's degree from his alma mater, where I am right now, Youngstown, Ohio, Youngstown State University. He is an excellent man. If you want to know anything about music, you got to go to a doctor. What's happening, brother? How are you this morning?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
And I'm doing wonderful. It's been a couple of months that have gone by since we've dialogued, man. But it's always great for me to have a conversation with you because I know you personally and I know you professionally. And in all points, you are absolutely excellent. Maybe in just one thing you can tweak, but the rest of them.
Well, hey, I think that's the case with all of us. Maybe more than one.
Oh man,
yeah.
No, you are on point. How's life going with you in Pittsburgh? Again, it's been about 9 or 10 months since we've connected. All is well?
Man, all is well. In the midst of the pandemic, you know, there's many challenges surrounding that. But my testimony has been that God has been prospering in the midst of the pandemic.
Yeah, man.
Almost, you know, you read about in the word about how in the midst of famine, God can bless you and provide and open up doors in the midst of a famine. That's been my testimony.
We share that testimony, brother. We absolutely do. Same thing here. Many things that we thought would be on shutdown, and absolutely many things have. But as far as my family and I, as far as the EntreMusician, as far as opportunities, it's just seemed like there's been open doors and open windows.
Same, and I celebrate in the fact that it seems like the Lord, Him knowing all things, gave us a glimpse as to what was to come, but not necessarily like the pandemic, but He was leading to develop areas before the pandemic. Business ideas, even just with employment and things like that, establishing some things so that when the pandemic came, it was like those things were already in place.
Yeah.
And it sustained us, it grew, it blossomed, and people were being blessed as a result of it. So, you know, I'm thankful, really thankful. And it's one thing when you do something and you get fruit from that, but when you know that the hand of the Lord is something that you couldn't have done, that's what we've experienced.
Man, that's excellent. Well, just tell us a little bit about your wonderful family, man. I see the posts that you're on Facebook, and I gotta say this, Alton, you know, and again, this is a personal statement to you, but as busy as I know you are, and as demanding as your schedule is, to see you just honoring your family, making sure that family's first, making sure your wife knows who you are, where you are, that your children, you're investing time in them. That's fantastic, man. Just share a little bit about your wonderful family, because you got it going on.
Man, well, that's a testimony in and of itself. I know it's the goodness of the Lord. I have a wonderful wife who I know only the Lord could have sent her. Serious, like just her very nature and who she is, and her heart and her spirit, and just the way that she loves. It's incredible, and it's a joy to be in partnership with her.
Yeah.
And as you know, Jere, Ephesians talks about loving your wives as Christ loves the church. I get excited about thinking about that. It is a challenge for us men to love that way. But with the Lord in us and empowering us to do it, I seek to do it. I will say, you know, when one does get married, it's very important to be led by the Lord, follow his leading, because every match is not a kingdom or a heavenly or a purpose-filled match.
That's true.
But yep. So I thank God for my wife. I think I got 2 children as well. They're age 12 and 10 now.
Wow.
My son is 12 in 7th grade. My daughter's in 5th grade. And they're really good kids. They've been hit by the pandemic from the vantage point of having to do online learning at home.
Mm-hmm.
So initially there was an adjustment there amongst the family, because many times my wife has the option of working from home as well. Mm-hmm. She's an attorney. And so she has the option of just turning her laptop and doing what she needs to do at home, which is a blessing in and of itself.
Absolutely.
You know, so there was at the beginning of the pandemic, she and all of us, we were at home, you know, trying to manage work. I'm trying to manage work, and the kids are at home, and they got questions about school, but we've got our routine down. Things are really smooth now. Yeah. But in the midst of being together, it's also formed even deeper bonds of just being together. And so I would say, Jere, you know, you know what it's like being a musician. You have these gifts. You're involved in many different things, whether it be church, groups. You know, you got your creative energy going on, and you want to create and write and do all of this.
Right.
For me, the Lord just put in my heart. I think just a revelation that you can be creative, you can have this going on and that going on, but when it's all said, at the end of the day, like, your family is really what's important. Because imagine being a great musician and you're doing all of these things, and at the end of your life, oh, he produced great music, but terrible father, terrible husband.
Yeah.
I don't want it to be said of me, oh, great musician, but a terrible husband.
Yeah.
And my son at the funeral will be like, yeah, he loved his music more than me.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's backwards.
Yeah.
I think when a man lays down his life and loves and invests and pours into his family, that fuels creativity. I've actually seen doors and things open up from that posture of serving the family.
Sure.
And then it fuels the ideas, the creative ideas, and it's momentum. It just serves as momentum to be a blessing to other people. Because when I'm around other people, man, it's what I experienced in my family that I can then that serves as a testimony. That serves as substance to be a blessing to other people. If it's other guys, especially in the music community, other guys that are incredible players.
Yeah.
I'm oftentimes that guy that's saying, you know, on the break at the gig, I like talking about my wife. I like talking about my family. A lot of the cats, they're like, they ain't talking about that.
Right.
You know, they talk about, man, I gotta go home. You know, I can't go out and play because I gotta watch my son. But I'm like, no, man, you got an opportunity, as far as being a father is concerned, and a husband, to sow into your wife, sow into your children. Absolutely. And to leave something greater than yourself.
That's absolutely.
Like it's gonna outlive you.
That's right.
You only gonna be able to create music. But man, I'll say this last thing and stop talking about this stuff.
You're good.
One of the things I love doing is pouring into my son and daughter music. They're both been studying piano since age 5, and you know, they learn how to read and learning how to read. They played some recitals with some other students, about 3 of them already, and I'm not pushing them to become musicians.
Yeah.
But what I love is that I'm able to teach them discipline, able to teach them the power of consistency, the principle of delayed gratification, where you got to focus on something for a long period of time. You might not see the results right away, but yet you develop the habit of discipline.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to see the fruit of that. And then in addition to that, they do understand their father, the creative side of their father, because a lot of times you see a musician, they just do that. A lot of people don't know what goes into it.
That's right.
But they have another perspective of their father. And then, the last thing is, my son in particular has received prophetic word before he was even born about playing and singing worship. And in that word, that woman looked over at me and said, "Sir, I see your son sitting on your lap, and you're telling him to put his hands on daddy's hands. And you're going to teach him how to play, and he's going to play and sing and be a worshiper." And talked about his temperament and all that. So now, fast forward 12 years, of like seeing that word come to pass,
yes,
brings me a lot of joy. Because more than anything, as a father, I want to see whatever God has in purpose for their life, I want to help bring that forth.
That's awesome, man. You said so many incredible things there. And, I think that as musicians, we need to take that step back to realize that the things that are best for us are not the accolades that receive because of what our gifts can bring us, but the things that are most important are the people who are right in our home and to nurture them. And what you said about the funeral is just absolutely right, man. Several years ago, I read a book by Michael Hyatt and Daniel Harkavy called Living Forward. And the very first chapter begins with your funeral.
Yes, sir.
The workshop is you write your obituary. You write what you want your family to say about you. And then after you write it down, you begin to live it.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because that's why I came off the road in 2008. My mom had passed away. Sound Doctrine was doing spectacular. I mean, we were just climbing the ladder. But I found that I'm calling my wife and I'm saying, we'll put Nia on the phone. Put Ayana on the phone. And it's like, somehow this has to stop because they're going to be grown and out of the house. And here's the thing, Alton. Now they are.
Yeah.
Now Lori and I are empty nesters, but they got their dad. And I have an opportunity to start over because it's just my wife and I and navigate the schedule where I can do what I love to do. But my daughters have that memory of dad being home. So I think that's vital, man. And it's important. And
it's funny you mentioned that, man. In 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey.
Yes.
There's a chapter in there called Begin with the End in Mind.
That's correct.
And he also starts with a funeral.
That's right.
And similar to what you said, man, what hit me in that chapter, he was at the funeral, he went up and he saw himself. And then there was a line of people at the front about to have words. It was his wife, his children. Yeah. And man, it was, I read this book many years ago, but that hit me.
Yes.
And then growing up in the church, I've seen some musicians, incredible musicians, but ragged families. So I'm like, I don't want that.
Man, I actually participated in the funeral, and I know we're but this is what the EntreMusician is about, man. It really is about the mindset, discipline, and focus that we need as EntreMusicians. So sometimes we have to get personal, but I think one of the saddest funerals that I had the unfortunate privilege to participate in, I wasn't the officiant, but I was one of the associates on the pulpit, is a young man. He was in his 30s and he got up to give a tribute to his father and he told the truth. And, there's that thing there's a little too much information, but he told the truth about this man who was a deacon and who was revered by other church people. But the home life, whew, and you sit there and you go, wow, you can't really turn the microphone off on this dude because he's the son. But he's so true. And it was probably the most glaring look at your public self and your personal self. And merge. Is there integrity in who you are whether church people see you or when you're out in public or on your job, and the way your family sees you before you leave to go out the door?
Yeah.
You're the same guy.
Yeah. I love that, your public self, your private self, that it merging. It was interesting you bring up this topic. I revisited this topic this past weekend, going back to 7 Habits.
Yeah.
And no mean for this to turn into an advertisement promotion.
Here we go.
But in there, he said he encourages his readers to write a personal mission statement.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And as musicians, we all know that the journey of being a musician, it never ends.
Yeah.
Because it is a spiritual thing, which I know we'll talk about.
That's right.
But there's always room for improvement.
Yeah.
And it's like once you experience a measure of success in your musicianship, then the more motivation comes. Okay, you want to fine tune that. You want to fine tune that to be more and more effective. Well, it's very easy to develop tunnel vision.
Yes.
Develop tunnel vision. It can open up the door to pride. Opens up the door to living a life that you're seeking to impress other people. You're not, you live a life from the outside in, and not from the inside out.
That's right.
You know what I mean? The outside in is everything you do is hinges on the response of the people.
Right.
And I think that's a very empty, unsatisfied, and I'll say thin life.
Yeah. Yeah.
It really, man, like shaft just blown in the wind.
That's right.
But it has the false appearance of success. And that's, in the scriptures, it talks, Jesus was tempted, and I'll give you the kingdoms of this world if you bow down and worship me.
Right.
Well, bow down and worship in him is, let me impress. Let me do this. Let me do this. I flaunt my gift in this way because that'll open up the doors for this platform. And then I get a bigger platform and get a bigger platform. And at the end of the day, if you cut through it all, and people might not like this phrase, but it's a matter of wanting to be worshiped. You know what I mean?
You in there.
Wanting, and you know what? The truth, it might come from the lack of being affirmed as a child.
Yeah.
It might come from a lack of being loved. Yeah. So, the people may seek a mirage.
Correct.
Or, I reminded of Bugs Bunny cartoon where the Roadrunner, I think it was the Bugs Bunny or Roadrunner, they would see that water in the distance and run all that way only to get there to find out wasn't water there.
That's correct. Wow.
And who wants to spend all their life running after something that looks so real and then at the end realize it ain't real?
Man, you pushing some buttons now. See, because Lori and my wife and I were talking just the other evening about several, we're movie buffs because we're looking at getting into that realm of writing faith-based sitcoms and faith-based movies.
Oh, that's great.
So we're movie buffs. We're looking at that. And we were thinking about the musicians, and this is a nice on-ramp to the spirit of music, because how is it that so many talented artists, be they actors, be they graphic artists, be they musicians, that have been endowed with incredible gifts? I mean, hands down, genius. Where did that come from? As you listen to their work or as you watch them on screen, and many of them, suicides, drug overdoses, depressions, they've gotten to the pinnacle of what we would call success. And yet it became apparent at the end of their career, whether they lived to 30 or 25 or 40, whatever the age, that there was an emptiness inside, that there was something they were seeking. God already blessed them and anointed them to do what they did to bless many people, but it wasn't enough. So just one more shot, just one more drink, just one more hit. And that took them over the edge.
Man, I think, like, with that mentality, like one degree of calibration can bring up a lot of positive change. And what do I mean by that? There's nothing wrong with drive.
Yeah.
But if the great musicians create all of these wonderful things, if the motive is praise, that yields an empty life.
Yes.
But if the heartbeat is, I want to help somebody, then that you couple that drive with, I want this to help somebody in some type of way, man. Instead of a funeral with having 5 people at it, there will be a testimony of people that said, this man, this woman worked so hard, used his creative gifts, and it resulted in him helping me in this way.
Right.
And then the testimony, but it comes down to, are you doing it for the praise? Or are you doing it from a heart of others, like having a mindset of others? Like, I want to give to others. I want to enhance somebody's life. I want to better somebody's life.
Yeah.
So,
my gosh, man, I don't want this to turn into 4 or 5 conversations, and I don't want it to be 5 hours long. But you said so much in that. We just have to unpack it again, because both you and I grew up in the church.
man.
Church musicians.
Yeah,
We've seen a lot of things that we, and this is not to disparage church life or ministry, but we've seen so much that we can say this is not kingdom. And it's been prideful, especially from the musician standpoint, because, just like pride may be elevated in the secular realm, when you're in church and you're good at what you do and it's absolutely gifted, you've seen even in major artists that, you're really not a rock star. I mean, again, it goes back to that personal, professional thing, because we understand what it means to be an artist, and you have to do some promotion.
Yes, you do.
You have to market yourself in a way that, it is, quote unquote, a business. This is an industry. And so there are formulas and standards that you do. But when you begin believing your own press,
come on,
when you begin believing that everything that everyone has said about you is true about you, and not deflecting that glory unto the Lord where it deserves, then you fall off the map. And unfortunately, we've seen it 100 times.
Yeah. So true.
And it's amazing. So look, here's what I want to do. Because you have, and I just want to touch on this before we go into this topic of the spirit of music, but brother, you have been blessed to work with some of the best in the business, from the Martha Munizzis to Jeff Tain Watts. You've been able to traverse both the deepest in gospel, the deepest in jazz, Sean Jones, Christian McBride, and others. Where do you find your core? Now, I do know that your core is your faith. I do know that. Well, what I'm asking is that you go deeper when you're, because you're such a student and an instructor of jazz music, yet you're such a student and instructor in the gospel realm as well. You find your core, Alton Merrell. Not Dr. Merrell, but Alton, the musician. Where do you find that core based in?
When you say core, are you saying preference and style, or
no, just the ability to transcend genres? Alton, the musician. When you sit down at the piano,
I will say that's something the Lord gave at a young age. And initially it was hard to understand because culture tells you what you should do and what you shouldn't do.
Gotcha.
But especially church culture. And also, what you see in that culture. So for me, I switched to start off on drums at 5 and switched to keys at around 11, 12. And so playing in the church, gift that made room quick. Dad's pastor, so was served from the time I started playing all the way up to 25. And gift made room, and it blossomed in the church. And but then about junior high school, started taking some classical lessons and getting into that deep. I also was introduced to jazz. But when I say introduced to jazz, introducing jazz from truly learning the language of jazz in my junior high school years. So before that, it was like I was that musician that, okay, you just listened to a whole lot of stuff, whatever you like, you did your best to imitate. Well, in junior high school, I met someone, actually, you might know him, Jim Garber.
Yeah, I know Jim.
Jim Garber he started teaching me, going deep in classical music.
Yeah.
But also the jazz. And the jazz was actually transcribing. So listening to this solo and writing it out, the music of it, and learning it note for note. I never did that before, but it just took up the whole language assimilation to a whole nother level.
Yeah.
Later on, did a lot of that and then had to do presentations on those transcriptions, play those transcriptions note for note with the artist. But then once the solo was done, to continue the solo in the language of that artist on courses after that.
Yes.
So that was a wonderful experience. It continues to be a great experience. I still do it.
Yeah.
But as far as the core of that, there was the training aspect, but that desire to play multiple styles was put in me. When I was young, I just loved runs. I just called it runs.
Yeah.
I remember John P. Key's "Never Shall Forget." That line, like I remember being in the basement learning that line. And then once I learned, I called my mom. I'm like, Mom and Dad, come downstairs, listen to this. And I would spend hours, learning that little riff that only lasted like 15, 20 seconds, but it was something that God put in me that it just started coming out, then went to college. And then being around other musicians that studying jazz, that opened up doors for jazz gigs. And before that, I was doing all kind of gospel concerts and doing recordings and stuff like that. But then college, it was like, Next thing I know, man, Tony Leonardi's calling me. He wants me to do a gig. You know, my professor's there.
Yeah.
And, you know, so then it's like, oh my God, like Tony Leonardi, oh my God. I better, he gonna call some tunes. I don't know. I better learn these tunes, you know. And it was, but it just caused extreme growth. And next thing you know, he putting in jazz band one, which is a big deal, you know.
Right.
And just grew. So as far as the core, God put the appetite for various styles of music, particularly gospel, jazz, and classical music. Primarily played classical music, incorporated stuff that I played in classical pieces and what I play by ear. Don't really desire to go out and just I'm going to do a classical concert. I mean, I might do it just for the challenge, but it's not, it's not a real desire. I like extracting what I learned from that and then incorporating into improvisatory music.
Gotcha.
You know, but initially it was a struggle because the culture that I lived in, it was this constant tension. Man, I shouldn't be playing at this club. You know, am I God's musician, or am I the worldly musician?
Right.
And for me, in the journey that the Lord had me on, Matthew, about being a light and salt. For me, God put that language, the ability to play these styles in me. And my journey was not only to be a light and salt in the church, but to be a light and salt in the world. So I find myself, you know, I remember time like being at the Bop Stop in Cleveland.
Right.
And piano, bass, and drums, doing a jazz gig.
Right.
And it was the feature. Man, I wrote arrangements of Amazing Grace, and we swang like there was no tomorrow. But what I love, not only, you know, implementing that soul Oscar Peterson-like feel to the music.
Yeah.
But what I liked just as much was being able to introduce the song.
Yeah.
John Newton wrote this song.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he penned the words that saved a wretch like me. And so I'm able to open up, you know, next song we're going to play is Amazing Grace. Mr. John Newton wrote this song. You know, he wrote it out of great gratitude and to the Lord, who he says that he experienced grace for transporting these slaves across the Atlantic. His eyes were open.
Yeah.
You know, and just being able to talk about the grace, talk about his eyes being, I look at it as evangelism. I can take what I've experienced in abundance in the church.
That's right.
And then go out to places that don't experience the light and that salt and share in a language they understand.
Exactly. Man.
They understand that language, but not often coupled with the message of the truth. And for me, that's what's been, I would say, the core.
Yeah.
That's the core. And last, like Apostle Paul could speak several languages, right? So he could go to different people groups. It's about the people. It ain't about, worship me. No, it's about the people. So if one can, I'll say it like this, invest, be a student of music and learn it, so that if it's classical, if it's gospel, if it's jazz, be a student of it, learn to play it proficiently, because you never know. You might get a call to a gig where you just got to read the music.
Yeah.
Well, if you can go there and be a blessing to the people in that culture. You might get called to play at the Kojic church. Okay, then you need to pull out all the stops on that organ and go for broke. You know, Or you might be at a jazz gig and you're playing with a jazz orchestra, which requires you to read some music, and then there's spots of improvisation and you got to go back to it. And they ain't rehearsing 5 million hours. Man, they rehearsing one 3-hour block of like probably 60 minutes worth of music.
Sure.
You know? Sure. And you go and you read, and then it's up to you. Whatever you don't have together at the rehearsal, you go and you learn it, and you show up to the gig and you produce.
Right.
But I love the challenge of all of that. But more than anything, it's like I'm thankful to be able to be at the table to impact somebody there. And there's different people in different situations. It's not just one, for some musicians, it's like, and they're called just to people in the church. And I'm not minimizing that.
Right.
That might be what they're called to. Be faithful over that.
Gotcha.
But for me at a young age, it's like he's put this appetite for various styles. And then it just started opening up doors in various spheres that at the time I didn't fully understand. Man, even when I went to Covenant Church of Pittsburgh,
yes, man,
that was a major culture shock. Because they was doing worship music when it was primarily 3 chords.
Right.
I was like, no, Lord, no, I don't want to play 3 chords. I come from Warren, Ohio, man, where, man, I'm sitting up under Eddie Howard and Michael Herron and all of these great players. And, the creativity was just endless, man. We would do licks in these songs and we would practice so long, Then back in the Carvel and Paul Cappy and but man, when I went to Covenant, it was like, But I seen people that I didn't see walk through the doors at that church, that I didn't see walk through the doors at home church.
Sure. People
were walking with overalls. There were white, there were
correct
people of different ethnicities. And it took a stripping, if you will, in order for a long-term gain to happen.
Yeah.
And the long-term gain is, this is a language. I was really introduced to contemporary Christian music.
Yes, correct.
Even though in the past it existed, I wasn't paying no attention to no Chris Tomlin. And
that's correct.
But I've come to appreciate, and now it's part of the tool bag, if you will, of ministry.
Right.
To pull that out and be a blessing to people that listen to that.
That's correct.
Because when at the end of the day, when your motive is to be a blessing to the people, I think you don't mind adjusting and learning the language that speaks to them.
Yes.
He put that in me in the beginning. I didn't know it was going to yield, sometimes playing CCM. I didn't have the language for it, but oftentimes process comes, transformation comes first, and then your eyes are open later as to the why. And it does require surrendering, like Romans 12, presenting your body as a living sacrifice. But man, when you do surrender, the things that the Lord has in store for you far outseeds what you may think happened in your life. Ephesians talks about God doing exceedingly and abundantly, but I think it first starts with saying, okay, yes, you've given me these talents and these abilities, but I surrender them to you, acknowledging that, Lord, you can do more with them than I can.
Yeah.
And man, I thank the Lord for the opportunities to be a blessing to people using different styles. And
yes.
And then meeting some of your heroes along the way. You mentioned Jeff Watts, and Christian McDude. I remember Jeff Watts on them drums and Christian. I felt like there was 2 Mack trucks, and I was in the middle, man. I felt like, because it was so much power.
Yeah, man.
Like I was like, so okay, let's go, let's roll, But what was beautiful was after the music, the conversations, and not just that instance, but in all musical platforms and engagements, it's the conversations that can be had while you're there with the people, with the other musicians.
That's right.
And if you come from a background of, okay, your heart is to be a blessing to people, that's often sticks out. It's different.
Yeah.
You start talking about your kid, your family. You start talking about, what you're working on. That's different. Oh, you wrote "You're the Reason." It's. Oh man, then that really blessed me. Well, I'm coming from a place like you're the reason why I live.
That's
Talking
right.
about the Lord.
That's right.
But there was that language that it was wrapped in of jazz that they was able to touch them. Yeah. They probably wouldn't have listened as much as I like Ricky Dillard or the gospel cats.
Yeah.
But
I understand it.
Yeah, man. Yeah,
I do. I understand it, and your context of how you're explaining it and unpacking your experiences. You referenced Ephesians 3:20, and it begins with saying, "Now unto him, who is able." You know what I mean? So it's not just exceeding abundantly above, so that you can benefit, but now unto him who is able to do it. So every experience that you've marked and categorize, whether it's gospel or classical or jazz, in the language that you've learned, or CCM, and the people that you've been called to bless, now unto him.
Yeah.
For you.
Absolutely. And fantastic. It's the life behind the style.
That's correct.
Man,
that's correct.
Now
I have to ask you this question, or we'll be here. We're probably going to be here all day. I don't want to be here all day. I know your schedule is like that.
Oh, good.
But so for everything that you're saying, I just, it's been my heart, and I must confess to this audience that when we started the series on the spirit of music, it stemmed from a conversation that you and I had a couple of years back. We were in person and we did an interview here for the EntreMusician, but you had said some things concerning developing this online school, and it's in full development. minstrelschool.com. We'll make sure we have the information up there for everybody to get to. But there was a reason that you chose the word minstrel.
Absolutely, man.
Okay. So I want to talk about that, and I want to know, brother, what comes to your mind when you think of the spirit of music? First of all, do you think that music is a spirit? First of all, do you think that, secondly, do you think that music is an entity that is expressed through the spirit of others, or music had to have a root, origin? How do you, without telling you all of the different perspectives that other musicians have said, just from your core, are we right to say that music is spirit? Second, what is the origin?
Okay, so the first question is music spirit. I believe it is. I think that what gasoline is to a car, spirit is to music. So it takes an individual to play an instrument. Like if spirit is not in us, we're dead.
True.
Right. So I think pitches and sound is generated from spirit. So there's many instruments to choose, but what plays those pitches is spirit. What was the second question?
The origin of music.
My understanding of the origin of music, some would argue, oh, it goes back to the Gregorian chant and the medieval era. But when I read in the Bible and about Lucifer, I've always understood the origin of music was, Lucifer being created, and as we know, had instruments in him. And it was his job to render the music in heaven for the glorification of God. But what got in the way? Pride.
Interesting.
And then it resulted in him and other angels being kicked out. So for me, or my understanding is that music began in heaven, and this purpose was for worship. That speaks a lot to me as far as what I think that the purpose of music is all a matter of worship, like we was talking about before.
Yeah.
I think where many get it wrong is many have used music to worship themselves.
Yeah.
Where it was intended to worship the Lord. Now that's a very broad statement. Some would say, man, you're so religious, man. What, I'm supposed to put on a robe and go to church and do it. Like I think that can look a number of different ways. Just like Jesus, when he was on earth, he didn't stay in the temple.
Correct.
So I do believe that music originated in heaven. The purpose for it was worship. It is generated by the spirit or the soul of an individual. All right. But when you think about its purpose, when it's used for something other than what it's supposed to be used,
yeah,
this destruction happens.
Yeah.
If I try to use something that if I try to use these scissors in a way that the creator didn't intend it for,
that's good.
then I'm missing out.
That's good.
And
those scissors can be used to murder.
It sure can. It can be. So, simply said, I think that music is to be used to glorify God. For Alton, that has been wow. Even before the music, it's the lifestyle, and it's the daily habits. I also believe the totality. You can look at who a person is by how they spend their time.
Sure.
Sure. There has to be balance in things. So for me, there is prayer time.
Yes.
And there is time thinking about and meditating on the scriptures. Yeah. And the scripture says, hide the word in your heart so that you don't sin against thee.
Correct.
There's a part that I play in surrender, because whatever we as a man thinketh, so is he.
Correct.
So if all that I'm thinking about is music, I think that in and of itself, it yields to music becoming an idol.
Gotcha.
But I think music is here it is. Music is an outgrowth of what your soul meditates on.
Wow. That's very good.
Very good. and for me, the music is the result of the inner work of the soul. What am I thinking on? What am I meditating on? Man, there's been times I just, reflect and think about the goodness of the Lord. I read some scripture and man, I get to thinking about what God has done in my life.
Yeah.
And not too long ago, man, like my spirit just began to just well up. And that song, Lord, You've Been Good, by Tall Galber,
Yeah.
came up, man. And I just then started playing that song. And that spirit of gratitude and reflecting on what the Lord has done in my life. When I go to play that song, that comes out in the music.
Now, so let me ask you that question. But with that answer there, then technically, are there tones, are there keys, are there frequencies or pitches that would lend one more to worship? Or like the scissors analogy, are there tones, pitches, frequencies that lend more toward the manipulation of the spirit to want to do something wrong?
Yes, there is.
How do you explain that?
I'll explain it like it's a simple. It's heavy. It's a heavy. I love the topic.
That's why we're here.
Yes, there are certain pitches and combinations of pitches that evoke certain emotions, certain responses. There's some keys that you can play in that are happier or brighter than others. If I go to the jazz world, for example, John Coltrane, he's was really into Eastern thought.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
And so he was studying the music of that culture, and he was really into what's called Indian ragas, which are certain pitch combinations. And there are findings, notebooks of him writing out certain melodic fragments. They call them ragas, and underneath it, he would write a descriptor like introspective. Another one, war. Another one, happy of some sort, excitement. That when I was doing my doctoral studies, my focus was McCoy Tyner, his pianist.
Gotcha. McCoy Tyner, yeah, absolutely.
Right. And John Coltrane was very deeply into the spiritual domain.
Yeah.
So he connected the spiritual things to his music because in the civil rights era, as you know, he was trying to transcend musical boundaries. Like for many years, man, people were playing in a key. This master musician transcended key.
Huh.
I mean, broke the mold of what was the norm for so long. So much so that piano players before Coltrane, the way they played the piano didn't work anymore. He had the name of the piano player that John Coltrane had early in his career. I don't remember his name at the moment. He let him go.
Wow.
And not that he was a bad player, but for where he was going and pushing the envelope and doing new things, that way of playing didn't work anymore. It was more of a bebop style of approach. But Coltrane began to play and transcend key. Or he would start off in one harmony and it would last for like 10 minutes. So you just, like the old school piano player, you just don't play, if it's D minor, you just don't play D minor chord and play it again. and play it again. But what made McCoy so awesome was him in that context of Coltrane, like really stretching out, playing melodic things in a modal, it's called modal jazz, modal context, one harmony. He began to what's called playing within that harmony. And then he came up with the force voicings, and then he shifted it around, but it was all different notes, but it was all in that mode of D minor, or E flat minor, like just tune impressions. And so I bring up Coltrane because, he was an example of someone who attached spiritual meaning to pitches.
I see.
And those in Eastern religions and that play music in the East, they often thought with that paradigm, and he adopted that. And man, people testified of being in concerts where Train played, and they testified and said they had almost like out of body experiences. Then there's some that will say, well, what spirit was he tapping into?
Yeah.
I'm not here to judge.
Sure.
But for me and my mission and my journey, I appreciated that research.
Yeah, absolutely. There's something definitely going on. And the reason I asked about manipulation is because there's a biblical context in the book of Daniel where the king Nebuchadnezzar set up this idol. And the reason and the purpose was for them to worship the idol, but the mechanism was music.
Yeah.
And when you hear all of these sounds from these particular instruments, you were supposed to fall down and you were supposed to worship the idol. And it causes me to think about where we are in modern music.
Yeah.
In the spirit behind it, and going, okay, well, when you hear this certain song by this certain artist, whoever he or she may be, is going to evoke a different response in you than it would if you play this artist. And so I'm seeking and searching, which is why when you want to know something, you ask a doctor, is are there frequencies? Are there beats? Is there a tempo? Is there a timing? Is there a rhythm? There was one preacher who was talking about when gangster rap really came into bear in the early 90s, about the tempo being slowed down, because in the 70s and 80s, you had more of a happier tempo. It was more like a, Earth, Wind, and Fire. You can read September, you know what I mean? But then when gangster rap came into play, they slowed it down almost to the heartbeat, which had really began organically. They could open up your spirit to put in those words of murder, those words of, which were anti-societal, that really got a lot of people engaged. And I was wondering what is going on behind that? And that's why we're doing this series, to just ask, is there validity to that? How, and you really helped us with the John Coltrane, and that he was tapping into other tones and pitches that transcended keys.
Absolutely. So, oh man, yeah, absolutely. So from a technical standpoint, there's a major difference in sound between playing in a minor key and a major key. What's for me in my journey, what's interesting is once an understanding was gotten about a lot of the things musically that the Lord blessed me to hear, I will say, as a musician, you can get to the place to where you know what combinations evoke certain things out of people. There's been times I've been in church service and people be like, whoa, the Spirit of God moved. And you know what? They put things under the banner of the Spirit came and hovered, and I'm not knocking that language.
Sure.
But being a musician, I was aware of what I was playing. And I know when I hit this chord, what response will happen? If we go to the black church,
Yes, yes.
there are certain chords
Yes.
that when you play that on the organ,
It's done.
get ready for the shout.
Correct.
So, yes, indeed, certain pitches and combinations do evoke certain moods, certain feelings. Different tempos evoke different feelings. Different drum rhythms evoke certain responses. You know, it's incredible. So, absolutely, but then what that does too is that places a responsibility on the music, just like
that's good.
A handyman.
Yeah,
don't use every tool for the job.
That's correct.
Wisdom says, what does this job call for? So therefore, I will use tool 1, 2, and 3. I'm not going to use all 20 or all 30. That's what wisdom and maturity says. Like, what does this need? You know?
Yeah.
I remember being young, playing at a conference one time, and Mark Sharona was the guest speaker. And he came to the altar call, and, you know, he was wrapping it up, and it sounded like he was like in a warfare mode. So I started playing some minor chords, and then the pastor of that church that he was speaking at, he sent word to me, he's like, don't play minor, play major. And it was very different from what I was accustomed to.
Gotcha.
Because he was, as they say, the angel of that house. I submitted.
Correct.
And I began to play major, and the whole mood changed. You know, it wasn't my choice to play major because I felt like he was in a minor vein, warfare vein.
Correct.
You know, but I played major, and I'll never forget that moment. You know, that for me, that was a lesson of submission to authority. You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
And that pastor is well-known worship leader, you know, and knows music. So, but I'll never forget that moment, man. You know, I've been in other contexts where there was a warfare. You go into that minor sound. Oh my God, the altars fill up and people getting delivered and set free.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But that's recognizing us. It's important for us to recognize the power that has been given to us, but then exercise wisdom and knowing what sounds to use.
Yeah.
You know, using those sounds at appropriate times.
Yes. Now, I must ask you this question. I'm going to ask you 2 more questions. I'm trying to respect your time, brother. I'm trying
you're good. You're good.
You're just going in there. But the first thing is you had talked about the different genres of music and your appetite for them and the ability for students that you teach in their reading to making sure that they're expanding their language because they won't have a lot of time to practice that they're playing for this orchestra or this. But would you say, from a standpoint of faith, knowing that there are ways that music can be manipulated, knowing that there's other artists who may have used, going back to the scissors, music to be more destructive, is there music that you, Alton Merrell, won't play if it's sitting in front of you because you know this is not going down the avenue of blessing?
Yes. Any music that has lyrics of destruction in it, because music, when there's lyrics involved, it becomes really black and white. Like, is this going to better someone's life?
Gotcha.
Or not?
Gotcha.
So that's how I make the decision. There was a time where it's like, man, I don't want to do R&B gigs.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But for example, not too long ago, I did this R&B gig, but it was Valentine's celebration, and it was celebrating love.
Gotcha.
And so being a married man, knowing what that's all about,
Right.
I was okay with it because it was celebrating love.
Gotcha.
It wasn't raunchy. It wasn't promoting promiscuity.
Right.
You know.
And we have the Song of Solomon in Scripture, so love is
Come on, man.
holistically celebrated.
Absolutely. So I'll say yes, but for me, a determining factor of whether or not I'll do something is the lyrics.
Gotcha. And I have to ask you about minstrelschool.com because there's a reason that you chose the word minstrel. And I want to get into that a little bit because I think that helps to envelop the spirit of music as well.
Amen. Thanks for asking, man.
Brother.
As you know, it comes from minstrel is a word that was used in Kings to describe, the minstrel playing before King Saul. Yeah. And when the minstrel played, the evil spirit left.
Yes.
So even the king knew the importance of music because I think that the king summoned the minstrel, which means skillful, one skillful on the instrument, to come, and almost like for medicinal purposes.
Yes.
Like bring me a minstrel.
That's correct.
And in that context, I believe also when the minstrel played, the prophecy came.
Yes.
He began to prophesy.
That is correct.
So from that word has like been branded on my life from an early age. And for me, it's a picture of the purpose of music.
Yeah.
Music is to be played skillfully for what purpose? To better other people's lives. And this is a spiritual illustration. Yeah, I believe that when music is played, that what is in a person spiritually has the ability to leave because of the sounds that come from the minstrel.
Yeah.
And so I think from that paradigm of when I'm playing, whether it's at church, whether it's in a jazz club, wherever it is, it don't matter. This evil spirits can leave a person anywhere. So minstrel school is all about, training people. For me, he's also put a desire to raise up others.
Yes.
And invest in others, musicians. And but it doesn't just stop with them becoming good players.
Yes.
It's all about, like, when I'm working with these students, you can't separate the tones from the life. So it sets the platform for me to talk about life, my experiences in life, my story. And I will put that on the website because they know what I'm about. So when they sign up, they know what they're gonna get.
Right.
I just didn't want to put, come here to learn how to be a better player.
Yes.
But let's couple the skill that you will develop with the character. And the character points to your motive.
Excellent.
So I've been fortunate, man, to connect with some people and share with them the life behind that. And you mentioned earlier, about marketing.
Yes.
I think in order to be effective, it's important to market, but they've got to be able to see what you can bring.
Yes.
That's what draws.
Right.
That's what gives if you sit down and you play them drums like they know tomorrow, that's gonna draw.
Right.
But then once they come to you, you can be like, let me share with you the life behind the beat that you hear. Because you want the beat.
Yeah.
You want that.
Right.
Well, let me share with you the spirit that fuels that.
Yeah. That's excellent.
So that's what minstrel school is all about, man.
Wow. Well, I would encourage any of you who, like myself, I think one of the regrets that I have as a musician is that I didn't take academic training as seriously as I could have in my formative years. But I'm still a young man. And so
Yes, sir.
there are excellent schools like minstrelschool.com where you can get this online training, not only from a technical standpoint, but a character building standpoint as well. So I would encourage you, because you're taking students, you're enrolling, it's all good. It could be internationally. So wherever you are, if you're in Switzerland, if you're in Austria, if you're in Japan, it doesn't matter. You can get online and connect with Dr. Alton Merrell. Boy, this has been an excellent topic. I don't know if we've even begun to go past the surface, but you have been deep in your answers. You've shared your heart. You've been very transparent, not only from your experience, but as well as your studies as well. And that's what I appreciate, man. This will not be our last conversation. You know that, right?
Absolutely, man.
If you just like, just text me every now and then.
Absolutely.
Like, are we going to make this happen?
Keep it online. I keep up with you on social media. I see what you doing your thing, man. On social media, I see you, man, and the podcast.
Yes,
right?
Sir. Yes, sir.
Absolutely. My hat's. Listen, man. I also salute you and for the work that you're doing. It's creating a platform, man, to have these conversations.
Yeah, it's my honor. It's my honor to serve, man.
Yeah, and that you do, man. I for the audience, I was blessed with the opportunity to serve at a church that you serve at.
That's
not too long ago, man. And I seen you just serving, man, like nobody's business, loving the people, man. And that's one thing I appreciate about you is whenever you see Jere B, you see Jere B loving the people and serving the people and loving his family.
Yes, sir. Well, I love my family. I'm grateful for my family. I'm grateful for my church family. I'm grateful for my musical family.
Yes, sir.
And I'm grateful to you, man. You are head over heels. Knowing somebody when you know somebody, because a prophet has no honor in his own country. But I want to make sure that Youngstown War and that connection, and just knowing where you came from, your formative years,
Amen.
what God has blessed you to be able to do. I honor you.
Praise God, man.
Nothing but great things to say about Dr. Merrell. I mean, because I've seen you. I saw you as a kid ripping up the organ at 14, where it's like, wait a minute. And to see you as a man and as a husband, as a father, and to see the great work that you're doing the world over, man, it's a blessing, because you've never changed. You've never, ever changed. You've never thought, I'm this now, I have this now, and see you later. That's never changed. You've always been true to who you are. God bless you.
Thank you, man. Music is humbling.
Say it again?
No, I said music is humbling.
It is.
The more you learn, the more you realize you don't know. Serious. Like, it's a journey. It's a lifelong journey, man. And it's always. Yeah, so that's how I look at it, man. Like, we're constantly evolving every day in all those major areas you talked about.
Yes.
Husband, father, music, like. So it's what like we haven't arrived. We're constantly becoming.
That's right.
Constantly. That's how I look at it, man. So, and it's great to have conversations with people like yourself along the way, because some of us can look in the rearview mirror and be like, yeah, I know this to be true, and I appreciate that, man. Hearing your story and sharing each other's stories.
Yes, sir.
It's uplifting.
Well, peace and blessings to you. Peace and blessings to you guys out there. Thank you so much for joining us. Go to minstrelschool.com. Go to altonmerrell.com. You'll see it on the screen here. You'll see it in the show notes. And Alton is very accessible to you. You can contact him via email, and he'll get right back with you. He will. The only person he won't get right back to is me. He'll get back to you. Dr. Alton Merrell. Bless you, brother. God bless you out there. My name is Jere B. I'm the EntreMusician. Dr. Alton Merrell is an EntreMusician. But you know what? So are you. We will see you again next time. Peace and blessings.
Peace and blessings.